Well, we are going to talk about a very important topic, what it means to be a headmaster. I have Nate Oppman with me on the call. Nate Oppman is a headmaster of a classical school in Iowa. He has been a headmaster for about 5 years. So, this is a really important job. I think it's a very exciting job. So, we want to talk about what it means to be a headmaster and how you could become a headmaster as well. So, Nate, thanks for joining and having this conversation.
Yeah, glad to be here, Daniel. I always enjoy talking about something I love, and I really love the opportunity I have to work with students in this field. Um, what does a headmaster do? A headmaster is kind of uh, a conglomeration of multiple roles, and I like to break it down into three aspects. The first role is you're a CEO of an organization. In other words, you're making decisions, you're hiring and firing, you're setting budgets, you're managing cash flow, all of those operational things. Most people that get into this line of work aren't there for the operational side, but obviously, if your school can't run, you can't do all of the things that your mission states. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of the job is one that people think of right away, and that's the educational side. Unlike more traditional superintendent or principal roles, which have some similarities to a headmaster traditionally is the head teacher. And so they're expected to have teaching skills, the ability to teach themselves, and the ability to teach other teachers, leading not just in the classroom, but also with their desire to grow intellectually and personally um, in their education. And then the third aspect of it is one that, in my experience, I think gets overlooked as well, and that's people management. And this is really true in any leadership position. But you have to be able to take the people that you have in front of you and train them and move them forward. You want them to come into your workplace one way and ultimately stay as long as they can and leave better than they were when they arrived. That requires a lot of patience, understanding of the different ways that people functioned, and also it requires you to evaluate people's skills. Sometimes people have skills in areas they don't realize. Other times they think they have skills in areas that they don't. And you kind of have to make sure that they're in the right spot to succeed both personally and as part of the organization. So really those three areas are the areas I think that sum up the role of a headmaster.
Well, thank you. That's very interesting. So, we've talked about what a headmaster is and kind of the responsibilities. Can you touch on each of those just a little bit more deeply? So, when you say CEO, what is a CEO and how do you become a successful CEO in this context?
Yeah, so when you talk about a school, a lot of classical schools are have started within the last 5 to 25 years, and many of them are either transitioning from their first head of school to maybe a second or possibly a third, or they're just graduating their first class after developing a high school. And the CEO's job really is to look at each year and make sure that you can pay the bills, make sure that you're competitively acquiring and retaining staff. That includes obviously compensation and benefits, but it also includes personal development. So personal development is huge.
Now, did you mean, did you say personal development or personnel development?
Really personal development for each employee. So I'm developing my personnel, but each at a school, unlike maybe a corporate office where the hierarchy is kind of set, for a teacher to move up, if you want to think of it in that way, they're often going to training, getting different certifications. Those are some of the traditional ways. One of the ways, though, that classical schools try to personally develop is by making the faculty more collegial. We want our faculty to be a place that you want to come because you're participating in amazing conversations. You're reading great books. You're growing spiritually, personally, academically. And when you come to work, your colleagues, your coworkers are really feeding off of each other. And that's something that I've seen develop as we've launched a high school over the last 4 years. That's something I've seen. We've moved a little bit from having to do all recruiting to being a place where people want to come because of the people. And obviously, you're constantly growing and cultivating that. But that personal development If you love your coworkers and you feel that you're growing just by being around them, that's a perk and a benefit that is tough to match. And even sometimes dollars can't account for that.
So you're saying that as a CEO, you've got to look out for the employees, all the people that run the school. You've got to help them grow personally, but you've also got to grow personally yourself to do that.
Yes.
So that's a big part of being a CEO, helping your
Yep.
people grow into the roles and help the students. You also said that you have to be the primary teacher.
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
Um, you have to people have to recognize you as someone that can step into a classroom and be successful. That's the simplest version. If I'm trying to lead a group of teachers, but they believe that if I stepped into their job, their classroom would fall apart, it makes it really difficult to move people forward because they're going to be pulling in a different direction. It also causes you to make poor decisions. I actually have a policy at my school that every admin teaches at least one class every year. And what that does is it keeps everybody in touch with teachers, but it also forces us to keep honing our craft. You know, our ability to speak in the classroom, our reading, our our personal development. Another thing I do as head of school is I try not to limit myself to one field. So I try to read books across all of the fields. I try to be aware of all of the content that our school is going over, young to old. I try to make sure that I'm understanding pedagogy from K through 12. A good example of that
Pedagogy.
would
What do you mean by pedagogy?
how to teach. So
Okay.
you're teaching kindergartners and 12th graders. Philosophically, you're doing the same thing, just on a different path. But classroom management in kindergarten looks a lot different in 12th grade. You might have the same goal, but the expectations change with the maturity of the student. If you demonstrate that you understand that, it allows you to be the head of the whole school and not just a part of it. The other thing is you need to read outside of your natural interest or expertise. So I naturally am drawn towards the history side of things. That's my specialty in my personal education. But I read books on math. I try to engage with our science teachers. I engage in a cross disciplinary way, and I talk about doing that with our team because I want them to see me doing it, and oftentimes they'll just follow that example. You're talking about what you're reading outside of their discipline, they'll want to talk about something they're reading outside of their discipline, and that's a huge piece of that growth of the culture.
That's very good, Nate. So you've talked about being a CEO. You've talked about being the primary teacher, which involves classroom management. It involves understanding all the different topics in the school and involves teaching well. You mentioned a third aspect of the responsibility you have as a headmaster. What was that again?
Yeah, as you go through, you have to be able to manage people on a personal level. So that's different than the professional leadership that you have as the lead teacher. Um, Many times in this role, you are privy to personal information. Um, somebody had a major financial loss. They're having family difficulties. They're feeling the pressure of home responsibilities and work responsibilities. And so you're not just, moving pieces on a spreadsheet. You're actually dealing with humans. And sometimes that means understanding that your policies have personal implications. So some examples of how I try to make my policy more personal. When I hire a teacher or I'm in the interview process, one of the questions that I will often ask and I'll often coach, especially if I have a newer teacher, I might say something like, um, how much do you need to make so that when you go home, you're comfortable with that? Because I find a lot of people are afraid to ask for what they need to make. And I'll just tell them up front, I would rather know what I need to pay you to make you successful, to make you not have to worry about paying your bills than I would having you scrape by and being frustrated every single week. And again, sometimes you can't pay what they need, but then you know that you need to go back to the drawing board on your resources and increase that base salary. It's a common concern I have or that I hear from other schools is just the ability to pay a wage that a teacher can either live on or provide an adequate second income on. And I try to index all of my pay to kind of local rates, and I try to adjust for inflation as well. Um, the other personal side, though, is when people are sick, let them be comfortable taking a sick day. If someone is having a family issue and they say, "Hey, can I get off? You know, my first kid is going off to college, and I'm going to need to miss a day at the beginning of the year." Don't just say, "Yeah, I guess so." Encourage that. So glad you can be there for your son. Go enjoy yourself. Don't worry about it. Um, Now you have to have a plan in place to cover for that, and that's part of how you allocate personnel. But when you do that, when people know that you're not just kind of, allowing them to leave for a personal matter, but you actually value their families, you value their personal financial situation in a professional context, obviously, and you're open to hearing from them. That's great. The final thing that I always try to cultivate is I want my um, office, my ear to always be open. And so I openly try to encourage people that maybe disagree with me or will push back on an idea I have. And I want them to know that they can come sit down, they can hash it out. And even sometimes I'll change my mind, and other times they'll go, no, we're going to stay the course. But I want them to know that I actually value that. And what that does is it helps surround you not with the yes men or people that are just going to say what you want to hear, but they're the kind of people that see your weak spots and make you stronger as a leader. And good leaders aren't afraid of people that are better than them at a lot of things. You want those people around you because it makes your organization better, it makes your mission go forward. When people know you value them at that level, and you can even praise them in ways that you say, I couldn't be successful without you, thank you for your contribution. It shows on a personal and professional level that you respect them. And again, that's a cultural thing that over time can be lost if you try to be a one-man show or you try to just get people that agree with everything you say. All of that contributes to that personal management. And I can promise you there'll be days where you're tempted to um, be in a hurry, and that employee that needs an extra 30 minutes to have a conversation, you're just going to want to skip over it. Sit down and listen to what they have to say. It's got to be a part of your daily plan that your people that you supervise have access to you. And anytime they don't, you need to expand your admin team. I've had to do that to where I keep my direct reports lower, and that again helps you cultivate that personal development.
You help keep your direct reports, what? I missed the last part.
A low number.
I see. I
Don't
see.
if you try to oversee
Right.
40 people, the reality is you're not going to oversee, three-quarters of them.
That's right.
Now, and there are phases in an organization where you have to do more than is ideal. That's not really problematic. The most important thing is that you know when you're not at the ideal and you're always aiming towards it. That keeps you grounded and really helps growth to occur.
That's really excellent, Nate. So we've talked about the responsibilities of headmastership. I want to transition into training,
Mhm.
and I want the viewers to hear about the skills and the experience you have that helped you become a headmaster and fulfill the responsibilities that we've just talked about. So, can you talk about what it takes to become a headmaster and some of the skills that are needed, and what skills you were able to acquire in previous
Yeah,
experiences?
absolutely. I think the first skill you have to require is the ability to work with people of all ages. I believe this role is not unique, but it's unlike many other roles because your constituency ranges from the youngest children to retired billionaires who might serve on a board. If you're at a school, you typically have that gamut. You're serving people from uh, wide economic backgrounds. You're serving people from wide educational backgrounds, both as customers and employees. And so you have to have the comfort to engage with all types of people patiently and with understanding. Some of the best ways to acquire that skill are in high pressure customer service jobs where you're annoyed a lot. And that may seem really like odd, but let's say like you're in a fast food environment or you're in like a call center, maybe you're in a hotel any kind of service industry where you're working with lots of customers all the time, um, you will run into people that are unreasonable, but you'll also run into people that have legitimate concerns. And if you learn how to maintain your composure and focus on serving them, and also recognize when someone is someone you can't help, that's a skill that you can develop. There are times where you need to expel a student. There are times where you need to fire a teacher. There are times you need to push back against a board member. But there are other times where you need to listen to a board member, hear from a teacher, or shepherd a student. And customer service is a great training ground for that. A lot of people might look down on a job like that. I think the biggest skill you learn is patience with people if you want to. If you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're always trying to get out of it or complaining, this job is not for you. There will almost never be a day where you make everybody happy because you have to make decisions for so many constituents that somebody's going to wish you did something else. Even if they like you, even if they're not like totally upset, they'll be at least, disappointed. Sometimes they'll be angry, sometimes they'll be frustrated. But if you know how to deal with that, you know how to listen well, and you've worked through that customer service, that's huge training. The second step up is wherever you are, try to figure out if there are other responsibilities that you can take and cultivate. I had a job once where a bookkeeper left about 2 weeks after I started. And my boss came to me and said, "Would you like to take over the bookkeeping responsibilities after hours? I'll pay you some extra money," which I needed at the time. And I did a crash course in QuickBooks. I use that all the time as headmaster, as I've had to train bookkeepers, even talking with the financial team and just understanding the process. Um, Gaining those skills is invaluable. I know a lot of my peers in this job, that's a skill that they didn't have the opportunity to acquire. And actually, I think it's maybe the number one reason that a school closes. It's just that the economic piece. Um, and so
And
gaining
you
those
learned that in a previous job.
yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you
I
took
came
those
in
extra
with
responsibilities.
exactly. It wasn't even a part of the job I was targeting, but I had an opportunity. I took it, and adding that skill to my toolbox made me much better equipped to be a head of school. And a headmaster is someone that needs a lot of tools in their toolbox to really truly be successful. And I would say this, it's not just that you can do it, it's at what level. Because a lot of people can run a school of 120 students that as soon as it gets to 250, their skill set might break down because you eventually have to delegate a lot of things. But when you delegate, you still have to understand. You're going to go before the board and make financial reports. And if you don't understand what your bookkeeper is doing, you're going to it's going to be trouble. If you have to sit in front of a donor and account for expenditures, you've got to understand how that process works so that you don't make a mistake or you don't state something that can't happen. And again, it's best to get that kind of as you step up in a job. Most jobs will give you an opportunity to learn things like that if you want to take advantage of them. And a lot of people would rather not, but if you look at it as a stepping stone, it's a fantastic opportunity.
That's great. So what I heard is people skills are extremely important to learn, financial skills, take
Yep.
extra responsibilities in jobs that you have.
Yep.
A job, you may have a job that you don't like so much, but you can see it as a stepping stone. You try to learn as much as you can in that job
Yep.
for the next job. Anything else quickly about
Yep.
helpful
Quickly
skills that you need?
read and learn a lot, and especially from authors that are dead. We're often blind to the um, problems of our own age. But I think it was C.S. Lewis that said that blindness can basically be cured by reading those that live in a different time. We can often see their flaws better; they can see ours. I would grab a great book list, like a great books list. There are a number of good ones out there. Veritas Press has one. There's a great book series that was published a number of decades ago. I would just start reading through those and read across genres. It will never hurt you to be more educated. And the more you self educate, the easier it is to acquire education when you're not paying for a college degree or being forced to do homework. Are you disciplined enough to educate yourself when someone else isn't holding you accountable? That's my final piece of advice. Just about every board or group that interviews for classical positions in general asks, at least we ask this question all the time: what have you read recently? And that tells us a lot.
It's very interesting. Very good. Thank you for that. You're a very skillful guy, very talented. You've had a lot of different experiences. Um, you've chosen to be a headmaster. Why?
I think that God gives us callings, strength, um, weaknesses, and as we cultivate the gifts that He gives us, and as doors open, we walk through those doors where we can be a blessing to others. I really believe that the opportunities that God has given me educationally and professionally have equipped me well for this job. And I love students and parents, and I love serving people. It's a joy to me to go to work. And I think our work should be a joy, even hard work, as we do it with all our might to the Lord. So for me, it's not just a job or a paycheck; it's a calling, and that's what adds so much more fulfillment to it.
Well, thank you. I want to conclude with just a brief sketch to give the viewer an idea of what maybe a couple of the challenges are of this job
Mhm.
and what a couple of the benefits are for those who might be interested in becoming a headmaster.
Benefits: you get to work with people and see students grow. There's just very little like that in the world. You often get to see kids change in drastic and awesome ways, and that is a huge blessing. And you get to partner with parents in helping their kids grow and be better. What greater treasure do parents have than their kids? And they trust you to be a part of that, and that partnership is pretty amazing. There's also a joy in uh, redeeming and growing things that are broken. In classical education, classical Christian education in particular, we can focus on the whole person, the spiritual, the academic, and all of that. And that is a joy. That's something our world is missing in many respects, and we get to address it. And I'm amazed at how often students are just thrilled to be able to wrestle through the big questions of the day Socratically, and to be able to engage at a level that most adults don't believe is possible. And just to see that growth is truly a joy. It's really the people that are a blessing. What's the challenge? It's the people, because you are going to deal with people that are unreasonable, that are in some cases just they just treat you terribly. It's not going to happen every day, but it's going to happen. Other times, this is something a lot of people don't think about. You are privy to a lot of private information, and most of the interactions that you have with people, you can't share with others, whether it's employees or students. Let's say you issue student discipline. You don't put out an all points bulletin that Johnny got disciplined for his infraction yesterday. Well, sometimes people will just assume he never got disciplined because you didn't put out that all points bulletin, and they'll wonder why. But you have to just have a thick enough skin, be patient enough, and recognize that sometimes people are wrong even when they mean well. Other times people are wrong and they don't mean well. And you have to be able to be strong. So the people are the greatest blessing, and the people are the greatest challenge. We live in a fallen world. It's no different than your church or your home or anywhere else.
Well, Nate, this is excellent information. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the viewers appreciate it. You're clearly very gifted and talented. You've worked very hard to become an excellent headmaster, and I would love to see a classroom sometime when you're teaching. That would be
Absolutely.
amazing. Is there a way for folks who are thinking about becoming a headmaster or might have questions to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you reach out, I'm going to give you an email address here because that's the best way to reach us. And that email address is communications, spelled out, at tworiversclassical.org. And that email goes to our team and will eventually come to me. And I'd be happy to talk with anybody interested in pursuing this field.
It will definitely make that available. Well, Nate, thank you very much. Really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, same here. My pleasure.